Apparently, my mic is muted. Hi, this is Greg. Welcome to another episode of the Detective Diaries. My name is Greg Lawson, and this is where I interview strange and interesting people I find along my paranormal journey. Today, we're going to be talking with Brad Blair. He is a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, researcher, author, and key man for the Michigan Paracon. Last week, we talked with Aaron Sagers. It was great. A week before last, we talked with Aaron Sagers. And he is a expert at geek culture, sci-fi, Comic-Con, all that stuff. It was a really fun talk. I've been trying to track him down for a while. So if you miss any of the other Detective Diaries, you can go onto my YouTube channel, The Detective Diaries, Greg Lawson, or the Paranormal Detective, Greg Lawson. So let's bring Brad in and let's see if we got him up. Hey, man, can you hear me?
Hey, Greg, got you loud and clear now.
That was something else, man. I was looking down. I was like, what is going on here? And then I realized that StreamYard had me muted. So hi.
I thought it was on my side, so I'm glad to know that that was you were the one with the screw up on that one.
Yeah, it's great. Hey, thanks a lot for doing this. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, and you're wrapping up your season. For those of you who don't know, Brad, he also has a couple of. You got 3 shops?
I do. I do. Three souvenir-based tourist shops in Michigan's Eastern Upper Peninsula. So, my interest in paranormal tourism goes a little bit beyond just the frill. It's actually really related to how I make my living. So, yeah, I was glad to have the opportunity to come on and talk a little paratourism with you.
Well, speaking of paratourism and ghost hunting, I have some evidence here of us doing some actual ghost hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember quite where that was. Do you remember?
That was the Palace Saloon in downtown Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, which does have a haunted reputation.
Well, today, because my doctor cleared me, for those of you who don't know, I had surgery a few weeks ago. I was in bed for 7 weeks. I'm up and around, but I've been cleared to have an adult beverage. So I'm going to have my adult beverage out of my Mayan skull mug here.
Beauty.
Yeah. What are you having tonight?
Well, believe it or not, I just happened to find some bottles of delicious Blatz, and brought out the Ouija Planchette bottle opener. So
As you should.
I will join you. I'll be drinking straight out of Milwaukee's best glass. So
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, the Mayans. I don't know where they got their technology back then to make these skull mugs, but it's strange because they have like Treasure Island stamped on the side of it. I don't know.
I'm guessing that was the Chinese Mayans.
It might have been.
Well,
so Lynn and I were talking the other day, and you and I and Lynn met in Transylvania or Romania.
Right. In Bucharest. Right?
Yeah.
That was probably 7-8 years ago now.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That was my first trip to Europe, actually.
Oh, really?
And okay. Yes. I'd had another one planned some years back, and 9/11 screwed that up. So that was the first time I'd ever actually been into Europe. And I get there, and you go into Bucharest and walk in through their customs, their immigration, and it's not like coming into the U.S. exactly. You walk down this blank hall. There's a guy that just kind of grunts at you when you hand the passport. He stamps it, and you walk in. So I'm like, okay, great. I get in, and I was meeting this tour group who I knew one person out of the entire group. And I got in, and I didn't see anyone. And I sat there for a bit, and there were no other flights coming in from the U.S. or Canada. And so I sat for a bit longer and waited for someone to pick me up, and nobody showed up. So about an hour into this, I pulled out some of the itineraries I had, and I saw there was a flight in another 2 hours coming in with a group of people. So I hoped and prayed that was still coming, and somebody would show up for that group that I could also get in with. So I sat in the Romania airport, Bucharest airport, for 3 hours, and this isn't a place that you just hang out. It's not a big Western airport that you have stores and bars, and you have some seats, and you've got a couple large armed guards with submachine guns walking around staring at you if you're there too long. So these guys looked over a few times, and I just sat and grinned and had my book and waited. And finally I saw this flight was coming in from the U.S. And I see this big dorky looking guy and his daughter come off first. I'm like, they look American, obviously. So I went up and I said, you guys happen to be here for the Darkness Romania tour? Yeah, we are. So, oh, hi, I'm Brad. And he said, oh, hi, my name's Greg, and this is my wife, Lynn. And I'm like, yeah, your wife, right? So, and from there, luckily, yes, a bus showed up and got us. And that was my first exposure to not just European culture, but really a very, very different culture. I'd been to Mexico. I live on the Canadian border, so, you deal with the Canadian culture here and there. But no, I mean, Romania, that was an experience. And that was, it was one of the best times I've ever had, more from the people that I met. It was one of those places that you're never quite prepared for as far as your diet goes.
No.
The food was, once we got outside of Bucharest, which had great meals. I love English breakfast. I love the European breakfast with, just the cheeses and cold meats and veggies and all of that. But yeah, once the further we got, the more out there the dietary options were, you could say.
Lynn and I stayed really safe there. We followed the custom, which is a shot of Palinka before dinner and a shot of Palinka after dinner or lunch or breakfast.
And a few bottles of Ursus to follow that, and wherever we might end up at. So,
if the sailors back in the 1700s could keep scurvy or lower intestine problems away with drinking beer. Well, drinking the Palinka, which is basically like gasoline.
Basically, straight grain alcohol.
Yeah, and it kills any bugs that may be in your system.
Anything.
Yeah, that's right.
It kills just about anything.
Speaking of killing things, here is a photograph I had the other day. I used it. Mm-hmm. This is you can't really see this painting very well, but it's in one of the I want to say it's in one of the restaurants that we went into in Sigishwari.
Probably. That was supposedly the birthplace of Vlad Tepes.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler, the basis for Dracula. So this painting is him sitting at his picnic table eating while his people are slaughtering the enemy he just conquered and vanquished.
And that's great to have for the atmosphere when you're eating head cheese and blood sausage and all the delicacies that they have there. So Sigishwara was one of my favorite stops, by the way. That is a beautiful little city. It's the upper part is fortified on a hill. It's supposedly Vlad Tepes' birthplace. That could be debated, but that's coming from the tourist aspect of things. This is where I really looked, and some of the little shops were really starting to play up the kitschy side of the whole Dracula legend, and they had little vampire statues. And that's where we found our Dracula shirts with the drunken bat on them. And it's a country that has not quite felt their way into the tourist industry yet, but it's a beautiful country. I mean, I would go back in a second. But yeah, you could just see they were kind of starting to feel their way out. I think it was 1989, 91 that they got out from under the communism. So they're just really getting into the feel of it. I loved it. And it's, I think 10, 20 years from now, you're going to see a lot more in the way of tourism going through that area of Europe.
Well, I know that the chicken, the grilled chicken, the fresh vegetables, the potatoes were all really good. A lot of the fresh vegetables. Also, I think we had better pizza in Romania than we did when we went to Italy.
The pizza was good.
The pizza
it may have been one of those things where nothing else really seemed to be edible. So all of a sudden the pizza tasted that much better.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
Could be. But some of the places there, though, the history there and it all overwhelmed the poor food selections.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. Sigishwara is amazing. Speaking of Sigishwara, I think I have, and since Carrie's on here, I think I have, boom.
A little bit of grave robbing in an ancient cemetery in the hills above Sigishwara.
Oh, it was that one
Carrie
most beautiful.
Dress appropriately for the activities of the day.
Yeah, Carrie was very concerned that I was actually going to put that up without protecting her
privacy.
Her
delicate nature.
Yeah, whatever that is. Her honor, maybe. But yeah, man, that was one of the coolest cemeteries. And for those of you who have not been to an Eastern European country, those cemeteries, at least that one there, they bury people, and after 100 years, you got all your tombstones set up. And if it's 100 years old, they take the tombstones and they kind of make a round wall, fill it up with dirt, and bury more people. It's like a wedding cake.
It is. Right? It's a wedding cake of corpses.
Yeah, they
used the headstones as land breaks, and some of these headstones dated back to the 1600s. Anyway, it was amazing, and it was a beautiful location. You're up on this hill; it's all forested. I love it when you see the moss and the greenery kind of overtaking. Hey, there we are. Look at that. You see that overtaking and just the cemeteries kind of being brought back into nature. And it's the only other place I've been to that I could even compare that to would be Highgate Cemetery in London, where they have the whole section that they no longer do burials in, and it kind of got abandoned for a number of years. And it's the growth there and just the beauty that's kind of came back over and overtaken all of these elaborate monuments, headstones, and whatnot. It's really something to see, especially if you're into that kind of darker tourism.
Right. Well, I think I have a photograph of that on my website, but I have a bunch of photographs of that old section of Highgate Cemetery there in London, and it's absolutely, absolutely beautiful.
Well, it's so cool too, because you've got, which ties in well with the Romania stories here, is you've got the old legend of the Highgate vampire that was supposedly pulling people in, killing people in there in the 1970s.
Right.
So, and that just adds to the mystique when you're going through that place. It adds to the creepiness. So we were lucky enough. I had my family over in England shortly after, the day after Christmas. We flew over last year, and MJ Dixon and her husband Duncan that run Sage Paracon over there took us around, and they gave us the tour in Highgate, and we got to see some of the more macabre sites in London. So it was a great time. But yes.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, Karen was asking, know of any of the UK locations. So she's involved with the Jamaican Inn in Cornwall. I haven't been to the Jamaican Inn, but we've gone to a few places in the UK ourselves, you and I.
Yeah.
And then Warwick Castle and
Warwick Castle is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We actually
the Tower of London. Even though the Tower of London is very commercialized, it's amazing.
It is. And when you get inside the White Tower, I believe they call it, in the center, and see all of these old suits of armor and weapons that were used by past kings, and it really drives a lot of that history home there. And there's such an energy there too. And how many people, royals and people that got mixed up on the wrong side of the royal family, that were executed right there.
Right.
And they still stumble upon bones from time to time in that area.
Yeah.
So, no, I love that. Warwick Castle was amazing. That we were there for, that was Sage Paracon, probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, so that was great. And that's just a beautiful area too, when you get outside of the city of London. And I love London too, don't get me wrong. It's actually become one of my favorite cities in the world now. There's so much to see and do there, and just so much history in that one city that I could go back time after time, and you still can't see everything. So
I agree with you on that. I love London. People talk about Paris. Paris does, it has some areas that are really beautiful, but as far as just the overall accessibility, transport, able to communicate, people are friendlier than the French. Man, I love it over there. I got to chime in here real quick. Look who this is.
Chris. Long time no see.
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for Christopher Quarantino. Thanks for chiming in and defending your relatives.
I have the light up reproduction of the Amityville house that my wife got me for Christmas. It's up with the Halloween stuff right now. I think of you whenever I put that out, Chris.
Wow, that's I didn't want to go there, but there it is. Thanks, Chris.
Uh-oh, spillage.
What?
Got a little too excited. My beer overflowed.
Oh, good. No, suds are good. Speaking of suds, what is this? Where were we there?
Cebu?
I know we were just really happy about having our pipes. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that was in Cebu, maybe day 2 or 3 of the trip. It was somewhere around one of the first smaller towns we stopped in.
The crazy part about this is I had I was on Facebook earlier, and a friend of mine from high school, he says, "Yeah, I need to take a vacation. I haven't been on vacation in 5 years." And I was thinking, I take like 5 vacations a year, But Lynn and I kind of have our priority, and our priority is apparently having no savings. But our priority is going out and seeing things. And I know people that I've heard for, like decades. Oh yeah, one of these days I want to go to Europe.
Wait, yeah, do it while you're young enough to do it. if you have to take the loan, spend the money, live the life. It's something I wish I would have traveled a little more extensively when I was younger, but I've really made up for in the last 10 years anyway. So and this is one of the hardest things for me personally with the whole COVID issue going on and the travel industry being almost to a shutdown is I'm coming into my slow season now. And for the first time in years, I have no travel plans. We had originally planned on going to Italy at some point later this winter, and now that's off the table. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that everything starts to clear up here, that maybe April, May, we take a couple of trips. We were looking at going to Salem Con, the event out in Salem, Massachusetts, in late spring. I know Lynn and I had talked, I don't know if she'd mentioned it to you, but about possibly going to Belvoir Winery.
Yep.
In Missouri sometime.
We can probably pull that off, I would
maybe
think.
March, April. So
depends on if you can walk or not.
Well, Lynn can still come along. So we'll send pictures. Carrie will send you postcards.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Lynn said she took us on the Jack the Ripper tour with Russell Edwards. An
extensive Jack the Ripper tour.
It was a 3-hour Jack the Ripper tour, right?
Yep. It was, Yeah, the SS Minnow was out a little bit shorter length of time than the Stewart went. So
I really want to have Russell Edwards on here and let him talk about his for those of you who don't know, Russell Edwards wrote a book about Jack the Ripper, and he believes that he has identified Jack the Ripper, and he's done so through investing a lot of his own money and doing DNA testing on, was it Catherine Eddowes' shawl?
I think so. I think so too. It's one of those things, though, and this ties right into the whole travel, tourism, dark paranormal tourism aspects. You could come out with definitive proof, and Scotland Yard may well have definitive proof of who Jack the Ripper was. That's a multi-million, if not billion-dollar industry for London.
Sure.
For England. They're never going to release that because then the mystique's gone. And then people aren't quite as interested. It's put a face to the killer. So all of a sudden, all of these tours, all of these hundreds of books that get put out, all of these documentaries, that's all shut down. It's solved. So that's, that is a big part of London tourism is Jack the Ripper. You see tours left and right, all of the places that he went to, the 10 Bells and these different places that we stopped off in. We never would have went there if it wasn't a Jack the Ripper location.
No, and how amazing is it to go to 10 Bells? I mean, which is a really cool place. And sit down and drink a beer and think about the women that were in there, and they walked right out of that door, right down that little corridor.
Off into history.
Off into history, man.
Yeah. No, and that's the kind of thing that, and I love traveling domestically. Don't get me wrong. There are amazing places in the U.S. that I love to hit. And we try and do something at least once, twice a year to get away. And I've got a son that's getting to that age that he can travel a little bit now. So we're trying to take him around a little bit more too. But yeah, you go to Europe, you go to England, you go to Romania, and you see these medieval castles and these places that were built that you're walking into. And the hotel we stayed at in Sigashore, if I remember right, that was built in the 1500s. Right. And it's still standing. You have all these places before there were settlements in the U.S.
And the only place that you can really find stuff like that in the United States is like down in Florida or up east. And still the Florida, the Spanish stuff that they have down in Florida is quite old. We got a Frenchman complaining here. Easy on the French, Greg. Yeah. Well, okay.
I'm in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, which is the oldest city in Michigan.
Right.
There aren't a ton of landmarks. I mean, there were Native American communities settled here hundreds, if not thousands of years before the Europeans showed up.
Yep.
But there's not a lot for historic landmarks because everything back then, it was founded in 1668. And as with just about everything in the U.S., the old structures were all built of wood, and pretty much the whole town burnt down twice. So it's hard to find the landmarks like that around here. there's certain places throughout the Great Lakes area that there's some alternative history, which is a whole different show, whole different topic. Tim Ellis and I have a new book coming out on Great Lakes monsters and mysteries that hopefully the manuscript's in, hopefully it's going to be out before the holiday season. But we do some big sections on, there's a couple chapters that really touch heavy on these alternative sites that have been discovered, but history really doesn't know what to make of them. So,
right. Yeah.
You know, you can go back in, but that's kind of prehistory. That's a damn fine book you've got.
Speaking of books, if you guys are looking for one of Brad's books, you can go on Amazon. You can find this. You can probably find it, I don't know, on your website and other places.
Supernaturalhaunts.com. We can hook you up with a signed copy, which will probably drop the value of it, or you can get it on Amazon. So that was the first book. Tim Ellis, myself, and Steve LaPlante were the three members of our paranormal group that put that together, which was a great experience. It was a learning experience, and we had probably the best teacher you could ever have. The way the book came about was we were sitting one day, and all of a sudden I got a message that pinged up, and it was Rosemary Ellen Guiley. And Rosemary was just an amazing woman. She had over 70 books in publication, and she said, hey, it was a group message to us, and she said, if you guys ever thought about writing your cases and your history into a book, you know, you guys have been doing paranormal investigations since way before the television shows started, and you're still together doing it, and you're in kind of a unique area, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's still remote. There's still more woodland and undeveloped waterfront than there are cities. So she really loved some of the history of the area. So we said, yeah, we would love to. We've talked about it briefly, but we had no idea which way to go with it. So she said, well, I would love to publish it for you, and I'll coach you guys along with it. So there was no time needed to think. It was automatically, yes, we would love to work on that with you. So that came out last summer. Unfortunately, and we didn't know it at the time, but while we were working with Rosemary on it, she was fighting cancer, and she eventually lost that battle very, very shortly after the book came out. So it was the last book that she actually fully worked through and published on her own. Yeah. And our second book is still coming out through her publishing company, Visionary Living Publishing. Her husband, Joe, is still running that. We're working with him on it. And unfortunately, with everything else in the world today with COVID, it slowed things down. So it was originally supposed to be out for August. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that possibly by November we've got it in print. And that's going to cover that. That'll be more legend, lore, and monster hunting in the Great Lakes area, where Supernatural Haunt is somewhat biographical, and it goes back to Tim and Steve and I and Lance Brown, who all went to elementary school together back in the late 70s and through the 80s and into the 90s. So yeah.
Why you guys don't have a TV show? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Seriously, you should.
We're too old and too ugly.
Yeah. Duck Dynasty. Never mind. Anyway.
Yeah, that was we were approached with something very very much like that. We've brushed elbows with Hollywood, say, on several occasions, and one was they wanted us to get an old beat up truck to ride around in and wear flannel and everybody grow in beards, and we were going to be the northern rednecks, which you to a point have a reputation of, but they really wanted to stereotype it down heavy, and we talked for a while, and there wasn't going to be any solution to it. You could tell after a while. Right. So we just, if you want to meet in the middle somewhere, and so we do different things. We do things differently than a lot of other people do up here. It's very cold winters, very beautiful summers. But like we were kind of pigeonholed into being the strange kids for everything. So when we were growing up and when we started the team, there weren't paranormal teams. I think there were 3 others in Michigan, the state of Michigan at the time, and they were all further downstate in the Detroit and some in the Western Michigan area. And so we were the guys in the UP that people started coming to with UFO reports and Bigfoot sightings and, everything on top of ghosts. And as kids, we were fascinated by all of that. So we'd been riding our bikes to the library for years and checking out anything you could find on the strange and unusual. So we did have a little bit of background in the cryptid field and very little in the ufology field, but enough that we could listen to people and write down reports and do things. So, we've kind of crossed, instead of just doing the ghost hunting and ghost and haunting things, we've dipped our toes into the other fields as well, because we had all of that coming to us because we were the only ones people could find when they tried to look for something in the Upper Peninsula to report these strange happenings. And it was that way for quite a few years until the television boom hit. And then there was a team on every block and everybody's house was haunted.
Yeah, and where I grew up, we were out doing ghost hunting / urban exploration, rural exploration. But any of the ghost hunting stuff that we did was we were they would say that we're going to look for Satan. I grew up in the Texas Bible Belt, and it's like, oh, that's satanic. What they're doing is satanic. So you didn't advertise that you were a ghost hunting group.
It was a novelty, but as Tim likes to say, people looked at you like you had 3 heads when you told them what you did.
Right.
And my mother still asks me when I'm going to get over all this ghost stuff. So,
speaking of 3 heads,
a few decades.
Those of you who have just tuned in, you're watching the Detective Diaries. I am talking with Brad Blair. Brad is an author, paranormal researcher, ghost hunter, and the key man. I call you the key man.
Key man
for Michigan Paracon.
Michigan Paracon, actually, it is fun because we're talking about travel right now. I guess that really sprung from Tim Ellis, Steve LaPlante, and I traveling and going to different conventions, conferences. They were all fairly small back in the day, but we'd go to meet these people, mainly authors who we'd been reading books by. There were the occasional person that had a show on at Halloween time that would show up at some of these things, but we wanted to go and learn and listen to people like John Zaffis get up there and tell their stories, and other people in the field back then that there wasn't really a mainstream outlet. The internet was still fairly new at one point when we were working our way in through this. So we read mainly through books and all, but we used to travel around and we'd go to these things in wherever, Chicago. We went to Florida for one bigger one. And that's Tim and I were on a flight back from one of these conferences. And we started talking and said, man, do you think we could ever pull something like this off in Michigan? And we got chatting a little bit about it, and it was just kind of a pipe dream at the time. We love traveling. We're kind of out of the way, but we love traveling for anything to do with the paranormal. And there's other people like us that do too. So if we put on a big enough show, it was kind of the whole "if you build it, they will come" premise. So we got our pens out, put them to paper, and said, we'd like to have this person, this person, this person. And at the time, the TV thing was still. It was there, but it was still somewhat in its infancy. Ghost hunters had been around for a few years, 2 or 3 years, I think, at the time. And we sat down and we said, well, let's approach the local casino. And we went to Kewadin, and their entertainment department just happened to be looking for alternative forms of entertainment at the time.
This would be an alternative. This is an alternative.
So the guy in charge of entertainment at the time was also somewhat of a fan of the paranormal, and he loved the idea. So we ran it by him, and we said, okay. And after it took probably a month to get something solid, and he said, okay, send me the names you want. Let's see who we can book. And of course, at the time, we wanted Grant Wilson and Jason Hawes. Ghost Hunters was the big thing at the time. We got a hold of a booking agent. He said, well, those guys are busy already that weekend. There's a new show, though, that's taping for their second season that's doing pretty good. It's called Ghost Adventures. And I could probably get you the 3 guys from Ghost Adventures cheaper than I could get you Jason and Grant. Well, that was Nick Groff, Aaron and Zach Baggins. So we ended up having them in for our first event. They were our headliners. It was I want to say we had 3 presentations on a Friday and maybe 5 on a Saturday, and it went over huge. And the casino loved it, and we were happy. And we thought maybe if this went well, we could have 2 events. We'd have 2 years out of it. And we'd planned it that way. We had different names set for the second year. So that went over. We planned the second year, and now we're going into the 11th year. At some point down the line, there was a manager at the casino that decided to basically gut the entertainment budget. And they said, well, we can't sponsor this anymore. If you guys can come up with something, we will work with you on it. So that was the year we thought we were going to have to call it quits. And just, we had a great run. We've had great shows. Maybe it's time. And we really didn't want to do that. We have so much fun with this event. And our whole team, the UPPRS team, it's the pinnacle of our year. It's our Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
We look forward to it. From the week after one ends, we're already several months into planning the following year. This is 16, 17 months we take to plan an event. So I'd approached the Convention Visitors Bureau in town, and I said, hey, this event sells out a lot of hotel rooms and brings a lot of money into town. Would you have interest in sitting down and talking about possibly sponsoring this? And they were all for it. And I was at a point, I guess, that said it's nut up or shut up. And so I ended up going, my company went in half and half with the local Convention Visitors Bureau. And that's how we've been running it ever since. And we still got Kuwaitan in there as a partner. They help out tremendously. They've been a great host venue to us over the years. So we stick with it. And unfortunately, this year with everything going on, we were forced to postpone. But yeah, we're looking forward to the 11th coming up next year. So
well, and I know that by far, Lynn and I go to a lot of conventions, and by far, it's, in my opinion, the best. It's not only is it in a casino that's a lot of fun. They got bars and stuff, which is very conducive to ghost hunting, but also
yes.
You got the Sioux Locks, which are just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For those of you who are looking at this slide, is it over to the left or to the right where the overlook is?
To the left.
To the left.
And that's where my storefronts are. To the right of Canada.
That's where everything goes on, and you can walk over there and go to that observation building and watch these huge ships come into those little locks and go through there. It's amazing.
Yeah, right off to the right is Canada. So, and that's, it all started from us traveling for the paranormal, and as it happens, it's become one of the biggest events for the city of Sault Ste. Marie because people travel in from everywhere. We've had
and it's not just because not just the Paracon, because Lynn and I usually come in a few days early and leave a few days late and get to go to really cool places.
Whitefish Point Lighthouse. Yep. That's the Edmund Fitzgerald sank right off of there. The bell from the Fitzgerald is in the museum there. One of the famous, probably the most famous shipwreck on the Great Lakes. So yeah, it's people have traveled. I think we've had almost every state represented now. I know this year before we had to postpone, we already had tickets sold to 24 different states. We had people from Australia booked for this year too. We've had groups from Australia come in, England, Canada.
Well, and also you have
Mackinac Island.
Yeah.
That's one of, if you're not familiar with Mackinac Island, it was originally, the entire island was a Native American burial ground for the revered tribal elders and chiefs. And it was one of these places that when the area got settled, to save you a history lesson, it was a strategic lookout where the lakes in the upper part of where Lake Michigan and Lake Huron meet. So there was a fort developed there. They started developing this island. It's beautiful nowadays, but the whole thing's built on a graveyard. And it's honestly one of the most haunted places in the United States, if not the world. We've been fortunate enough to investigate on there on numerous occasions. Amy Bruni has ran in the past her Strange Escapes travel events. She's booked events there, I want to say 3 or 4 years that we've spoken at that have had some amazing results. And the hauntings there are so unique. We do cover one of the locations there, Mission Point Resort, in our Supernatural Haunts book. And we have a little bit more that we're talking about the Pukwudgianini, or the fairy folk of native lore that we've had encounters with on the island. That's going to be in the next book too. But an amazing place. It's the #1 tourist destination in Michigan. If you've never been there, it is gorgeous. You can only get there by boat. There are no automobiles on the island. And you pretty much take horse or bicycle anywhere you go. So I know you and Lynn have really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we've gone over there with you a couple of times, and and I would love to go over there and stay at least one time at that hotel. That hotel is absolutely amazing. It has the longest porch in the world. Is that right?
Grand Hotel. It was at one point. I'm not sure it still holds that record. That is booked all summer long. Most places on the island are. You need to get an early booking to go across and hit that. So
MJ popped in.
Hey, MJ. She'll be here for MI Paracon next year.
Yeah.
the 21 version.
So yeah, man, I can't say enough. Lynn really looks forward to MI Paracon just because it's 140 degrees here and it's 68 degrees.
See, it's all about the travel. It's all about the journey.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, and we've had so many people come up too that have been here from different states, which is always interesting to me, that say it's like a different culture up here.
Right.
And
it
is. It's kind of fun, and that's, it's something that I look for when I travel too. I know we've been to New Orleans with you guys in the past too, and that's a completely different culture in many ways. Another one of my favorite cities, but for very different reasons than London.
Interesting you should say that. We got Michael Reyna that popped in, said, so are myths and theories about paranormal stuff different up there than down in the Carolinas and Louisiana and Texas? And I would say yes.
Yes. They're mainly based on history, and a lot of it's based on your regional, say, specific cultures. Also a lot on the geography. Obviously, you get down into central Texas, you're not going to have a lot of stories about lake monsters and things of the more nautical nature that we have up here. And it was all heavily French settled originally. So there's a lot of our legends spring from old French legends that come through the area. And it's the different religious aspects that are in different areas too also influence a lot of it. I mean, we've been over in Romania. They're very superstitious. You still go by houses that they will build a crucifix or the evil eye into walls to try and ward off evil. They're still very superstitious like that. You go to England and it's like, yeah, these places are haunted. They've always been haunted. The ghosts are there. So what? I had the opportunity to go to Cuba a couple of years ago to do some investigating and take in some sites. And it's a little bit more, yes. And that was one of the days down there. It's my Cuba hat and a nice little drink. But that was it. It's a little more religious aspect, but you've got a lot of Santeria and Bantu down there that you have these side pseudo religion. I don't want to call it pseudo religions. That's going to piss some people off. But
you didn't mean pseudo, but. No. Kind of alternative.
Christian, really. There's a lot of the West African religions that are mixed in with Christianity to develop some of these. And we got the chance to talk to a Bantu priest or shaman, actually came and spoke to our group. I was down there with Chip Coffey, and Chip was kind of trying to not translate, but interject in, you're talking about your beliefs like this, and he would fill in kind of the Christian beliefs and overlap some of the supernatural aspects. And it came up to the point where Chip asked, does your religion still perform ritual sacrifices? He said, yes, we do some on animals mainly, not humans anymore. He said, well, maybe some over in India still. He said, I could bring pictures. And that Chip gave him a big hell no off of that. But yeah.
Speaking of Chip, I sure wish Chip would come on the show with me. I love Chip Coffee, and I would really love to spend 50 minutes with him on the Detective Diary. Speaking of which, those of you who are watching, if you can go down and click like and share, you would not believe how much that helps me when you guys share these broadcasts. You can also go to the Paranormal Detective Greg Lawson at YouTube and pick up these past episodes, and Brad will be in those past episodes. Yeah. When you were in Cuba, that was like what, a year ago, 2 years ago,
2 or 3 years ago now.
Was it?
It was probably 2. I want to say 2 years ago now, maybe. It was interesting the way it all came about. I came in and it was a typical Northern Michigan February day. It was blustery. It had been windy. It was snowy. It was cold as hell. And I sit down at my desk and the phone rings and it's Chip. And he says, Brad, you are a big Hemingway fan, are you not? I said, yeah, I guess we've talked about that before, but I said, I am. I read everything Ernest Hemingway's put out, and I don't know how many of his biographies. And I've just always found him a fascinating character. And he had part of his youth spent in Northern Michigan. So I had a little bit of a connection there. And he said, I've just been booked to work a paranormal event in Cuba. And he said, I would love to have somebody there that's a Hemingway expert. The people that are putting it on are very interested in this. And I could really use somebody else there for the paranormal investigations. That's an experienced investigator. And I'm like, Cuba? I'm like, damn, I never really thought about going to Cuba before because it was always kind of a taboo if you're in the U.S. So he said, they've got everything worked out. Let me put you in contact with them. And so the family that owns Haunted Burnbrae Manor up in New York, really nice people, the Frazee family. And so we got talking, and I talked to them, and I called Chip back, and we chatted for a little bit and about the setup and all. And I said, okay, I'm in. It's when am I going to get another chance to go do ghost hunting at Morro Castle in Havana? Right. So we ended up doing that, got to visit Hemingway's old home in Cuba, Finca Villa, which was his favorite house. In his life. That was one of the things that really drove him under towards the end was he couldn't return to Cuba. And you go in and there's still his clothing hanging in the closets. His shoes are on a shelf. His books are in the library there. The Cuban people really revered him. He helped build schools and libraries and was great to the people there and absolutely loved it. And you talk about feeling an energy when you go into places. And that place, I lit right up. I didn't want to leave there. I would have loved to have had an opportunity, to stay at night and investigate the premises because I'm sure he was there. But yeah, that was we got to visit, and I narrated the bus trip there, and then we got to go hang out at his favorite bar downtown Havana, the Floridita.
I think you gave me some advice if I went to Cuba as far as the toiletries.
Yeah, there. You might want to bring your own toilet paper. It is a completely communist country. There aren't stores that you can just go to get hardware supplies. So, as an example, there were more than one toilet that we saw in a public place that had a water bottle cap drilled out with fish line through it that ran to the back of the tank that you pulled to flush because you can't just run down to Home Depot and buy a toilet handle.
No,
there weren't toilet seats in a lot of the places we went. Once again, once something's broke like that, you can't just go and replace it. So it was a different feeling. A lot of people asked, did you feel safe there? I felt absolutely safe. There was no place that was threatening that we went. And we were around the island in different areas. We stayed outside of Havana in a beachfront area, but
I think I would go anywhere in Cuba as opposed to downtown Detroit.
There's nicer areas of Detroit nowadays, but
there. I'm just saying, since you're in Michigan, I thought I'd throw that in there. That's the southern part, but
no, it's
okay. Let me say Baltimore then.
Okay. we can agree to shit on Baltimore. So the people are just very indifferent there. I mean, they know what they're getting. There's not a lot of motivation. You could say that's putting it politely. It's a very different culture. I was glad I got to experience it. I would like to go back and spend a little bit more time in Havana and explore that a little bit more, because that's where a lot of the real history is at. We went into some very cool places there, some very, very old churches, cathedrals, and just the downtown area. There's a lot of life there. It's fun to be downtown Havana. So that was a great experience.
So we've talked about Romania, we've talked about England, we've talked about Michigan, we've talked about Havana, we talked a little bit about Texas, I suppose. One of the other things I think is interesting is when you go to these different places and you see like paranormal artwork, you can see this different stuff. And this is one of my favorites that I picked up.
Well, now that is absinthe in the right hand there. That was downtown New Orleans 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, why are all your ghost hunting pictures have to do with some sort of alcohol here? What is what's the correlation of that? I drink my beer out of my skull mug.
Yes, those are group trips. You need to take more, and I know a lot of people can't just up and go for a week or whatever, and time is short, but
it is.
If you go to a location to investigate a haunted location, say right before everything kind of hit the fan with the COVID thing, we had a group up at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. You need to have a couple extra days to explore the area, to find out what the background is of the area, the history. That all feeds into a haunting or to a legend. It's not something that you just hop into and hop out of. And that's why whenever we go, we like to go, if it's domestic, at least 3 days, 4 days if we can get away, time constraints and such. So yes, Amanda, liquid courage. It's the true key to any real ghost hunter's equipment bag. That's one of my favorite ghost hunters of the past, Harry Price. Very controversial. Back in the turn of the century to the 20s. Oh, yeah. You could read, I've said it before because I've read multiple biographies of Harry, and you can read different biographies and think you're reading about a totally different guy. He was kind of led the forefront on eccentric and getting media attention, but he always kept a snifter of brandy in with his ghost hunting equipment in case somebody got scared and passed out on the investigation. He could give them a little snort of brandy to bring them back around, was his story.
Well, that certainly helps. And you did point something out. So, as I said before, I have friends of mine that's like, man, I would really love to go to London. Well, you pay $600 a month for that truck that you have. If you were driving maybe an older vehicle, you'd have that money, because in Austin, we have a one way to London. So it's round trip about $700. So you can get there.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to quit putting off travel to the end. You need the travel at the beginning in order to broaden your mind on what's going on, because not everybody thinks the way you do. Right.
Yeah. And you want, at least me personally, we like to hit different experiences, go different places. Said I have been up to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park multiple times. I don't know how many. I love the area up there. Yeah. I love going up, and I've got very good friends in Denver, so we'll stay with them a couple days and go up and spend a night or two at the Stanley. Another place I really enjoyed going to that I think I've mentioned, I hope to get back to the end of, hopefully the end of COVID and the end of winter, but it is Salem, Massachusetts. I don't know if you and Lynn have ever ventured that way, but it's history meets the paranormal meets the tourist industry, as far as the way their shops are set up, and they really play up the whole witchcraft history.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. It's fun. And the
and lobster is really cheap there. I think my cholesterol went up about 1,200 points. I ate lobster rolls for breakfast, lobster bisque for lunch, lobster tails for dinner. It was fantastic.
Lobster pie for dessert. Yeah.
Speaking of eating and partying and doing like group tours, see, I like doing the group tours. Sometimes I like doing the group investigations. Sometimes, typically, I like going kind of maybe just 2 or 3 people, 4 people.
Yeah.
But this is Amy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Amy Bruni and myself. That was on Mackinac Island at one of her Strange Escapes events. That was
so
obviously Halloween.
With Kindred Spirits, right? If you guys haven't watched any of the Kindred Spirits episodes on Travel Channel, you need to go over there and watch their back episodes. And her and Adam and Chip are on there, and it's one of the better ones. And I really enjoyed how much effort you put into the Jon Snow wig there.
You know,
is it on backwards? What is that?
That was probably later in the night. If you look to the right and see all those empty bottles.
Yeah. All right.
I was going to grow a beard in for that. Unlike you, I can't stand having a facial hair. That's something I've never come accustomed to. I see you did finally shave. So
yeah, it takes about 4 or 5 weeks to where it's not digging in and making your face itch the whole time. And as soon as I got comfortable with it, Lynn was like, "You look like an old man. Shave that off."
Good for Lynn. Good for Lynn.
There's repercussions on not shaving.
Yeah. But you're talking about the group versus individual, and a lot of it depends where you're going to. I think if you're going somewhere you're completely unfamiliar with, it's hey Nikki. It's nice to have a group. It's nice to have people that know what they're doing, where they're going, assuming they do, and that have been there before and kind of walk you through things. I'm not a fan, and I know you and I have talked about this and can somewhat disagree from time to time, but I'm not a big fan of the group bus trips. I don't like having everything planned down to a 5-minute segment. And if I find something I want to explore, I might decide I want to spend, half a day or a day there and not have to hurry up and rush one place to the other. And if I don't see everything, I don't see everything, but you can always go back.
Right.
So,
and Lynn and I, we love some of the bus tours and we love being on our own too. It's kind of nice to be able to just pay. You get on the bus,
right?
They tell you what to do. You relax. You can drink all you want to. You can eat all you want to. You can do whatever, as long as you get back on the bus, as long as you make it back to the bus, you're good.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of time frames. You and I have traveled enough that you know that.
Yeah.
Get up and run when you do, and hang out where you're at. And
I know there, some of the trips that Lynn and I have gone on with Dave Schrader. We've been on Romania trips with him, England, Ireland, and it's been in France, and it's been great because I don't have to research the places we're going to go to. And you're lazy. We went to that I would have never gone to had it not been for Dave Schrader. And Dave Schrader is with Darkness Radio and on the Halser Files on the Travel Channel. For those of you who have not watched that, it's worth watching.
That's coming out next month again with the whole Spooktober.
Yeah. And, speaking of a bus trip.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a climb.
So that is Ponary Castle. That was Vlad the Impaler. That was Dracula's real castle. That was not the Bran castle that you see in all the TV shows and stuff like that.
How many thousands of steps did you have to walk up?
Well, it was about 1,500 steps. So it was enough to where some people didn't make it to the top.
Yeah, we took most of us took our time. I think Justin thought he was going to sprint that and ended up having half a heart attack by the time he got up there. But yeah, that was quite the adventure though. And that's the actual ruins. Getting up to the top of this just to think about how much it took to build that back in the days before automation, and how anybody could invade that going uphill. And if you had enough of a force, you're so fortified up there. If your forces are enough, you could repel anything, you would think. But he got attacked there, and he got ran out of there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The legend is his wife heard that he was killed in battle, so she threw herself from the wall of Ponary Castle into the river.
Right.
Problem with that story is if you go to Ponary Castle, the river's about a mile that way. She
must have had a hell of a long jump.
Well, there were bats, so maybe she turned into vampires, and she turned into a bat and went into the river. I don't know.
And the thing is, you never see on the Travel Channel shows on when they show Ponary, it is the mannequins impaled.
Oh yeah,
spikes right when you get to the top. I wasn't expecting that. It was
that was great.
Nice local flavor.
Okay, so Faye said it was 1,480 steps. Were you up there when when we had the paranormal experience right before we took our picture?
When that gust of wind kind of swirled and we had the devil going? No.
Was that crazy? That was great.
Yeah. No, that was
Dave Strader ruined that for me. So for those of you who were not there, what happened was we were all gathering inside the castle and the walls are all broken down. There's no roof and there's like this dirt that has filled in this area. And it was a beautiful day. There was hardly any wind at all. And all of a sudden the wind kicked up higher and higher. And all of a sudden, right in the middle of all of us, this big dust devil came out of the ground, and it's right there. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's Vlad. He's there to tell us that he's here. And he's, and about that time, Dave Strader throws his arms out, starts walking into the dust devil screaming, "And I shall smite thee with thy vengeance." And that ruined the whole thing for me.
Yeah, well, it happens, but no, that was cool. That was an experience that it's something to see once in a lifetime anyway.
Well, how many people have actually gone to Dracula's real castle, not the Bran castle, this Ponary castle?
Well, now
gone up there and done that.
Yeah, exactly. And you bring up Bran Castle, and Bran was the basis for Stoker's Dracula's castle. That was what he had seen, and that's what he based his Dracula's castle on. Now you go to Bran Castle nowadays, and you're thinking, what you think about as far as the geography is what you see at Ponary. There's nothing around there. It's all hills. It's all forests. It's very remote. And you have to climb your ass up a big hill to get there. You go to Bran Castle and you're walking into a big tourist town, if you will.
They got snow cones and cotton candy and the whole thing. Yeah,
T-shirt booths and it's a major. What we had busloads and busloads of school kids were there when we were there. So you're kind of getting pushed out of the way and trying to work through. And you get to the top floor of Bran Castle, and there's a big story. It's probably the only one about Dracula in there. And instead of a picture of Bela Lugosi or one of the famous Draculas, they've got a picture of Kiefer Sutherland from The Lost Boys. Up in the top.
I didn't see that.
Like, that's great.
Hey, man, we have been talking for almost an hour, and I had planned on getting the folks that were watching to ask you questions, but man, we have run out of time. Tell everybody where they can find and buy your books. And
Yoopernatural Haunts is available right now on Amazon. It's YOOPER Natural Haunts. And on youpernaturalhaunts.com is the website. For information on the Michigan Paranormal Convention, miparacon.com. You can get your tickets there. You can get the current roster. There's still more coming to that. Still kind of in the works on that a little bit. And you can find me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to keep up with Michigan Paracon, Michigan Paranormal Convention on Facebook is the site that gets updated the most.
It's certainly worth it, man. Brad, thank you so much for doing this. I know you had a lot of stuff to do, and I appreciate you coming on and doing this. And
thanks for having me.
I'm hoping to see you before the end of the year. Maybe we can pull off the Belvoir Winery or
nice. We'll get something going. We always.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, and I will be seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
All right, bro. And that was Brad Blair. He is a author, paranormal researcher, explorer, ghost hunter, all around cool guy, head of key man for Michigan Paracon. I call him the key man. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in. If you have any questions or anything, you can go down and write them in the comments. Brad and I will answer them a little later. And if you would like and share this page, it would be great. Don't forget to tune into like Darkness Radio and Jeff Belanger's The Speakeasy. We already talked about Kindred Spirits and Halser Files. And hope you guys come and see us on the Detective Diaries next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Thanks a lot for watching, y'all. And I will see you soon. Bye.